and God blessed us. He blessed you to be born in this nation, because this nation is a blessing that He ordained. And there's a whole different thing on that, but we celebrate that on July the 4th. And if people know history, it actually should have been July 2nd. That was the planned date. That's how it was supposed to be, and the votes had been done in Independence Hall, Philadelphia, and John Adams actually wrote a big letter saying, you know, let July 2nd now and forever be a day that we celebrate with fireworks and celebration. Also, it's supposed to be July 2nd, but they delayed it 2 days, and it's July 4th. And I told the people on this on Wednesday night, in 1776, July the 4th of that year happened to be on the Jewish calendar the 17th of the month of Tammuz. The month of Tammuz, day number 17, the 17th of Tammuz, is a day that they remember Moses breaking the Ten Commandments on that day, and also the walls of Jerusalem in 587 BC were breached on that day. And then our nation was founded on that day. And God never has coincidences. And what that tells me is God blessed this nation as it was. You understand, we're not even 250 years old, and we're the most powerful nation in many, many ways, militarily, economically, depending on how you want to argue that situation. But no nation in the history of the world has gone from 0 to number 1, you know, from last place to first place in less than 250 years. God blessed this nation. He accelerated our prosperity because He ordained this nation to be a nation that would protect His word. Remember, Moses broke his word on that day to protect his word, and that's what we do as this nation, and also to protect Israel and Jerusalem. Israel's greatest ally is us right here. So that all being said, there's many different things. It's really cool to see how the hand of God working even in the forming of this nation. And so we honor that. We honor everyone that's come before us and our forefathers. So glad to be living in this country. Amen? All right. It's got its problems, but it's the best thing going, if you ask me. And here we are. And so looking forward to what God has today. And many of you, I say it I think every month, but many of you know that when we have family breakfast, which we hope that you guys, we do this family breakfast, and you know, we want to do that because this church is about fellowship and family. You know, there's times where you might find that some churches, and I know everybody operates differently, but sometimes church is about, you know, a routine. Sometimes it becomes too routine or too much about an agenda. We want to always make sure this church is about the fellowship of families. That's why we are happy to, you know, be an environment where families can be comfortable together with one another. There's a lot of friends here in this church. There's a lot of people that have great relationships outside of the church. That's awesome. That's great. And one of the things we always want to be able to do is give that time on Sunday mornings, although we can't do it every Sunday morning, but we want to do it on our family service at the first of each month, where you guys can say, look, let's get up, not worry about rushing and pouring bowls of cereal for the kids and cleaning up a big breakfast mess. Let's just get the kids ready. We'll be comfortable. It's family service. Let's go hang out and fellowship and have breakfast at the church. And we want to be able to do that. So thank you for all that help with that, and invite you to come if you've never been to a family breakfast, as family service is the first of each month. But when we have family breakfast, when we do that, we're actually taking up the time where we would normally be practicing music. And so every month, once a month, we have to do music on the fly with no practice. She's already mentioned we did the wrong key. I don't know how that happened. I already asked the musicians. We played the notes that were on the page. Something happened with the page. We don't know. But it's a testament to how good these singers are, because we really did play it in the wrong key, and they still sang it and sounded great. So you guys did great. Good job. So, but honestly, we did. Just so you know, we did play it in the wrong key. We're trying to figure out how we did that. Don't know. But we played the notes on the page. But it is probably Randy's fault. So let's go on with that in the book of Haggai. Actually, no, we're going to be in the book of Habakkuk and the book of Haggai, two minor prophets starting with the letter H that no one can agree on how they're pronounced. We're going to start in Habakkuk, and that's where we were last time, and we're going to be right back there. And in the book of Habakkuk, if I say it enough times. Habakkuk. In the book of Habakkuk, let's say it that way. Habakkuk. There you go. Chapter 2. Habakkuk, chapter 2. Are you all there? Say amen. Really? You're all already there? I'm the one behind. Chapter 2. We read this last week. Verse 1. I will stand my watch and set myself on the rampart and watch to see what he will say to me and what I will answer when I am corrected. Then the Lord answered me and said, write the vision. We covered this last week. Make it plain on the tablets that he may run who reads it. Last week we talked about who a runner is. We talked about who a sitter, a walker, a runner, and they're all different. Okay? If you didn't get that one, I think we do have the audio online. We streamed it live. Check out YouTube. You want to hear that message because you fit into one of three categories. You're either a sitter, a walker, or a runner. But God said the vision is not for sitters or walkers. The vision is for runners. Make it plain so that he may run who reads it. This is for runners. Verse 3, for the vision is yet for an appointed, everybody say appointed, appointed time, but at the end it will speak, it will not lie, though it tarries, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. Okay? It says the vision is for an appointed time, and I had you guys say appointed. What word do you think of when I say appointed? Appointment. If you have an appointment, that means you've called ahead. Whether it's the doctor's office or wherever you go, and you've called ahead. You've got an appointment. They've told you a time that you're going to be there. And if it's the doctor, they told you to be there at 1:30. You show up at 1:15. They don't call you back until 3:45. And they let you sit in a room for another hour with no pants on. That's how an appointment works in the doctor's office. But how an appointment is supposed to work is that they tell you, yes, people who work in a doctor's office, we all don't like that. But anyway, we don't like it. Let me at least keep my pants on. You know, if I have to wait that long in public, I need my pants. But the way an appointment is supposed to work is they tell you, here's the time, and you get there. Now, if you have an appointment, the appointment is a certain day, and it is a certain time, correct? If you come on the wrong day, what's going to happen? It's not going to happen. Why? It's the wrong day. If you come at the wrong time, if you show up way too early, guess what you get to do? Sit and wait. If you show up after the appointment, what happens? Besides the copay, which is ridiculous, besides the charge that they're going to charge you, because if they cancel your appointment, they don't pay you. But if you cancel the appointment, you got to pay them. I'm just against doctor's offices today. I don't know why, but God bless y'all. But anyway, if you show up late or the next day, what happens? You missed it. It's done, gone. You don't get to be seen. So an appointment or an appointed time is important because it's there for a reason, and this will only work if you're where you're supposed to be at the appointed time. It's not going to happen early, and it's certainly not going to happen late. It's going to happen at that time. Okay? For the vision is yet for an appointed time. Now, we talked last week about what a vision is. A vision is something that God has ordained in your life. This is going to happen. Now, there are promises in this Bible that you can hold true as visions, and the promises in this Bible are the blessings that he has promised, the things he has said. This is going to he is going to make this work. If it's something that's going to happen and needs fixed in your life, you need to have a vision right now for a way that God is going to fix this mess. Whatever the mess is, God says, I can fix it, and you need to have that vision. You need to have that vision that says, God's going to fix this mess, and I know one way or another, I don't know how he's going to do it, I don't even know when he's going to do it, but I have a vision that it's going to happen. So if that's the case, then we know we have that vision, we have faith for what's going to happen, but he says it is yet for an appointed time. There's an appointment. And I've told you all before, God's will is only half of the equation. Because yes, it is God's will for that mess to get fixed. It is God's will for that blessing to happen. It is God's will for this thing to come to pass that you are believing for. It is God's will, but that's only part of it. It's only part of the equation. The other part is his timing. His timing is very important. And one of the strangest things about this scripture, if you'll put it back up, put up verse 3 for me, Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 3. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it will speak and it will not lie. I'll come back to that. Though it tarries, everybody say tarries, okay? Wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. Now, this is what kind of blows my mind, kind of makes me go cross-eyed a little bit. Because how many knows there are no mistakes in the Bible? Now, there might be mistakes and a few errors in a few of the ways that, you know, we got into English and got a few different kinds of things, and maybe, but the Word of God is infallible. There's no mistakes there. So God didn't put something there and then, whoops, that's a contradiction and that doesn't quite work. That must be a mistake. That never happened. Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. Now, he just said it won't tarry. Not going to tarry. But if it tarries, is that not a little bit weird to some people? He just said, it's not going to tarry. Don't worry about it. It's not going to tarry. Obviously, the word tarry means be delayed in any way, shape, or form. It's not going to be delayed. But if it is delayed, wait for it. Now, that's kind of weird. You know, if I have somebody telling me, and you know, because I deal with some things where I'm on a timeline, and especially during the day, I have to plan my day, and I have kind of a schedule. And if somebody tells me, I will not be late, will not be late. All right, cool. But then they turn around and say, but if I am late, now wait a minute. Something doesn't work out here, you know. I won't be late, but if I am late, that kind of sounds like what God's saying here. Though it tarries, wait for it. It'll surely come, but it won't tarry. It's weird. In the Bible, in the Hebrew language, the word tarry is, that's a weird one, maha. Mem, hey, yeah, okay. Maha. That's what it is. In Hebrew, sorry, no, maha, in Hebrew. But the word maha is 3 Hebrew letters, and the last letter is one of these strange letters that we have where you can write it different ways if the word appears in a different place in the sentence. It's kind of weird. In Hebrew, you have that. You have a few letters where you have to write the letter differently depending on where the word is in the sentence, or where the letter is in the word, I'm sorry. And if the letter is at the end, you write it weird in a different way. And it's really neat. I think the Hebrew language is one of the most fascinating things ever. But it completely changes the perspective of the word. And the word is written differently here than it is here. And the way it's written different is it gives you a different perspective. He says, though it tarries, and that's a different perspective than it will not tarry. The perspective you have here, though it tarries, is if it tarries, if it is delayed from your perspective, from your observation, it's delayed. Wait for it. But it will not tarry. This is a different perspective. This is God saying, but from my perspective, it won't be delayed. It might be from yours. It might seem delayed from your end. But from my end, it's perfectly where it's supposed to be. God made sure he put this in there because he knows us. Most of the time, we don't have a problem with his will. We don't have a problem with the stuff he said and he's promised this he's going to do. We don't have a problem with that. What we always end up having a problem with is the timing. We never agree on that part. God, I completely agree with your will, what you're saying you're going to do. I love that. I agree with that. What I'm arguing with you about here is the timing of this whole thing. Because from my perspective, it seems like this should happen a little sooner. It seems like this should not be delayed, but it is being delayed. I don't like that. And from my perspective, it seems like the timing could be a little bit better. But God is in heaven saying, but you don't see what I see. You don't see things the way I see things. Have you ever watched your children do something and they get aggravated and upset over something they're trying to do, or maybe something's happening, and you know things they don't know? Maybe you've been there, but whatever it is, you're seeing it from a different perspective. You're seeing things differently. You know something else about this, so they're aggravated. You're not. You know, it's just, and it's hard to come up with an example of that, but you do understand God can see things you don't see. God can even see the future. God knows what's going to happen. He knows when it's going to happen. And so that's why he can kind of be the guy up there on the throne saying, chill out, everything's going to be all right. Okay? From my perspective, this thing isn't delayed at all. It's going to happen at exactly the perfect time. Being in ministry, my wife can testify to this, we can testify to it together. Being in ministry and knowing God's going to do something, timing is everything, and you will never be more frustrated with God than you ever, when you're in ministry, than when it comes to his timing. Because, God, I think you should have done this 6 months ago, and I'm still waiting on it. And the frustrating part in anything, in your walk with God or in your prayer life, how many people are praying for something to happen? It hasn't happened yet. They are. Just a few of us. The rest of us are perfect. Okay. But we're praying, God, I need you to fix this. God, I need you to do this. It hasn't happened yet. And your frustration is not, oh, I don't think God will do it. Your frustration is, God, what's taking so long? Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. You're going to think this is taking too long, but God knows different. Okay? Sometimes you're wondering, God, what has taken so long? Have you ever gotten to the end of something and you saw the outcome and then you turned around and everything else that had happened made sense? And you're like, oh, now I understand. You know, oh, I got to this, now I see that this had to happen and this had to happen. And I heard somebody tell this one time. There was a woman who prayed for her husband to be saved, and she prayed for 20 years. And she prayed for over 20 years, and she prayed for him to be saved. And God promised her that he'd be saved, but it took over 20 years. 20 years of frustration, 20 years of, God, what's taken so long? Come to find out, he got saved not at church. She took him to church every Sunday. He didn't get saved at church. He got saved at work. He got saved at work from a coworker who started telling him about Jesus. And as it turns out, that guy didn't get saved for like 18 or 19 years. The guy who told him. So as it turns out, God's saying, I'll get there, but the guy I've got ordained to bring him to Christ, I got to get him saved first. So you have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. You have no idea what God's up to, but he's always up to something, because he says at the end, it will speak. What he's saying is, it'll be words, it'll be truth. At the end, you'll be able to say, God is the truth and every man a liar. See, there'll come a time where you're shaking your fist at heaven and wanting to cuss God up one side and down the other. And what's taken so long, surely we wouldn't do that. I would never say those. I would never say those things for God to hear me. See, that's the problem, is you think that just because you don't say them, God don't hear it. So sometimes the things that it's on our hearts, God knows it. Don't try and hide anything. Just tell him how you feel. See what happens, you know. But watch out for that. Don't get too crazy with that. But God knows how you feel. And one of the greatest things that God ever taught me, and literally this was 6 months ago, one of the greatest things that God ever taught me was how to get my frustration out. Because if you can't get frustration out of the way, you won't get anything done in ministry. If you can't get your frustration out of the way, and so I've spent my whole life thinking I'm going to get down before God and all of my these and thous and verily I say and twain asunder, all that has to be polished and great, and I'm going to speak to God. But then one day God said, won't you tell me what's really on your mind? Won't you vent to me for a little bit? I know you're frustrated. Vent to me. You do it to somebody else, do it to me. And so there I was at the altar, and I vented to God. And he said, now don't you feel better? I said, as a matter of fact, I do. I really do. And you know, and God's saying, see, the problem is you think that I don't know how frustrated you are. I see things about you that you don't even know. I know it's there. we got to get that frustration out of the way, because God's saying, from my end, everything's happening according to plan. Now, if things start going off of the plan, whose fault is that? Who got out of the will? Was it God? So you do understand that sometimes it takes a long time because of our ignorant selves. Sometimes God's in heaven saying, I tried to do this for you 5 years ago. You're the one who took the long road. I tried to bless your family a long time ago, but you decided this was going to, you delayed it, not me. Right? Has anyone ever found themselves in a place where, oh, hey, what you doing? Oh, I'm just waiting on God. I'm waiting on God. I actually grew up, now there wasn't people in our church, but they'd bring in ministers, and there was actually this one minister. Oh, I hated when he came. God, I hated when he came. I tried everything, make myself throw up, everything, to stay home from church. I did not want to hear this man, because I knew you were going to be there till 11:30 at night. Awful. And this man would literally come to the church. I don't know what these people's problem was. He would come to the church and get up, bring his Bible, and then he'd be doing this number, and Jesus, I need you, Lord. And he'd literally do that for like 5 or 6 minutes, and then he would say, I'm just waiting on God. I'm waiting on God. He's going to give me a message to preach. He's going to give me the message to preach tonight. I'm waiting on God. And I was just a kid, and I'm sitting there thinking, now, fella, I think you should have come a little more prepared. To be honest with you, I think you probably should have had something cooking, Granted, I'm not the preacher to be, criticizing anyone for not having notes. I haven't had notes in forever, and they mess me up, and that's just me. That's how it is. I'm not saying some people have lots of notes. But you should have something. I'm just waiting on God. I'm waiting on God. I'm waiting on God. It took me forever, and I had to grow up to, and you know what? Even through that foolishness, God used the man, whatever. God bless him. I'm sure he's dead by now, so I shouldn't be saying too much about him. He was old. He was old when I was a kid, so I'm just waiting on God. I'm waiting on God. We spend a lot of time waiting on God, don't we? We spend a lot of time waiting on God. Now, of course, that's Scripture, and I talked about it last week. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. I'm going to bring that back up again, because I told you guys what that meant last week. I'll bring it up again for those of you who weren't awake then or who weren't here last week. I'm waiting on God. I'm waiting on God. God used the most interesting event in my life to teach me something about this. I'm waiting on God. It was the birth of my second child, little Ike, Isaac Reese Phillips. He was born freezing cold day in March 2009. There it is. And that was a rough pregnancy, man. I was sore. I was like, I didn't sleep. He was, a week and a half late, a week late. I was done, literally, exhausted. And there she goes. She's having contractions. I had just fallen asleep. She's having contractions, and so we're going to the hospital. And I've done this before. This is child number 2. What I'm doing, get in the car. We're going. It's so cold. And so when we got to the hospital, and I parked the car, I knew I didn't want to stay outside in the cold. So I didn't think she would either. So I got out of the car. She got out of the car, and I'm going to the hospital. And I get to the door, and turn around, and she's not there. She's over there having some kind of contractions. If I'm anything, I'm compassionate, okay? So I stayed there, and I held the door. Well, she's having a contraction over there. I'm compassionate. I held the door because I knew she's coming. Am I lying? This is truly how it happened. I'm holding the door. I'm cold. She's busy having some kind of contraction or something. So she's coming. So I had to wait. Waiting on Amanda. Well, she finally gets there. And I'm, hold her hand. Everything's going to be okay, honey. When I let go of that hand, and there I went. There's the elevator, okay? That elevator, people are getting on it. If we don't get to that elevator, we're going to have to wait to the next one. This is a hospital. They take forever. It's the middle of the night. So I'm going to get the elevator. And I get it, and the people are just looking at me like, and I'm like, what's these people's problem? Well, there she was back in the hallway having another contraction. And so now I'm like, you guys go on. So now I'm waiting, and I wait at the button compassionately because I'm going to hit the button as soon as the doors close, and it goes. And I keep the whole trip up to that room. I had to keep waiting and waiting and waiting. And I realized the reason I had to keep waiting was because I got way ahead of her. I did. If you get way ahead of your pregnant wife having contractions and you get way ahead of her, you're going to have to wait. Okay? I probably should have went back. Looking back on things, you can do things differently. I had another shot. We had third baby. I think I did everything perfectly then, but I was terrible in the first two. I really was. I was really bad. You don't even want to hear the stories of how I was with Jet. When Jet was born, I really needed to be kicked out of that room. I really did. I was causing nothing but trouble. I was bad. I am a pastor. I am not a birthing coach. And I was never, men, where you at? They don't teach you this stuff. They don't train you. They take your wife in, tell her a bunch of stuff. They've got classes to tell her what's going to happen. They have nothing. They don't take the men aside and say, here's what, they don't do that. So I'm kind of like not to blame here, maybe. I don't know. But I kept realizing I keep having to wait on her because I keep getting ahead of her. And then I realized God's saying that should tell you something. When you spend most of your time waiting on God, it's because you keep getting ahead of him. See, there's a certain pace where God's going to do some things, and that pace is perfect. There's a reason why God didn't make things happen overnight. You weren't ready. Yeah, God's going to fix this. He's going to bless this situation. How many people have ever been in a mess, and I need God to fix it, and you wonder why he didn't fix it an hour ago? Because God knows something about you. I can fix this mess now, but unless I can work on you first and get you to the point, I know if I fix this mess now, guess where you're going to be tomorrow? Right back in your mess. And now I got to fix it again. So God says, I ain't going to do that. That ain't how it's going to happen. Because that is not the way it's going to work. Have you ever seen or have you ever been that person, somebody who's got to get saved 3 times a year? Somebody who's got to give their heart to God, rededicate their life every 2 or 3 weeks? Good Lord. I mean, and sometimes it's just how, and God's in heaven saying, you know what, this ain't how I designed it. I did not design this whole thing to keep getting you out of your mess that you keep getting into. If you read a very interesting chapter in the Bible, it's in the book of Galatians. He said, do not be entangled again with a yoke of bondage. That word again changes the whole thing. He said, do not be entangled again in a yoke of, what he's saying to people is, I don't have time to fix your tangled up mess every 5 minutes of your life. We're never going to get anything done if I have to keep untangling the mess you've caused every day. So if I can first disciple you as a good shepherd and get you to the point where I have matured you enough to bring you to the next level, now I'm going to fix your problem, and I know you ain't going to go back again. So that's why he said, don't be entangled again with the yoke of bondage. He's talking to a group of kids. He's talking the way I talk to my toddler children. I told them 25 times not to do that, and they keep doing it. And I come back and say, stop doing that, stop doing that, stop doing that. That's how toddlers act. That's how you have to talk to a child. And God's saying, don't be entangled again and again and again. Stop that, stop that, stop that. God's saying, I have a perfect timing to fix your problem, but before I do, I'm going to make sure this problem gets fixed, and we ain't going to be looking at this mess again next week. So sometimes God hasn't fixed your problem because it's actually you he needs to make some adjustments on first. And maybe you're bucking against that. Maybe you're rebelling against what God's trying to do inside of you. And so this thing's taking a lot longer than it should. And God's saying, if you'll ever let me fix you first, I'll fix your whole problem. But we don't want that. God, just fix this so I can go on tomorrow. And God's saying, that's not how my timing works. My timing's perfect. But then again, there's the times where we're trying to make it happen earlier than what God said. And then we find ourselves waiting on God. Well, I'm waiting on God. Well, I'll tell you something. God's not in the waiting business. He's not in the business of let's do something and then let's just wait a while. I'm going to do nothing. Let's sit around and wait a while. Oh, what about that chapter in Isaiah? What about that verse, they that wait upon the Lord? I told you that last week. Wait upon means serve in that instance. If you're a waiter at a restaurant, you wait upon tables. You serve them. He said, they that serve the Lord. And the problem is we have misconstrued our idea of what that verse means, and we think that, boy, they that wait upon, and we're spiritually spending our time doing this and looking at the watch. They're going to receive it. No, that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about what I need is people who, even when the timing seems to be taking longer than them, the people who are going to still serve me during that time, I have a renewed strength for them. They're going to make it through this thing because even when the timing doesn't line up with their will, they still serve me. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. Now go with me to the book of Haggai, chapter 1. Because I've already told you the will of God can be there, but if the timing is wrong, it messes everything up. In the book of Haggai, and I've already brought this up maybe a week or two ago, and I told you about how the prophet Haggai was a prophet after they came back from Babylonian captivity. The people had rebuilt their own homes and had not rebuilt the temple, and Haggai was a prophet that came back and said what God gave him to say. In chapter 1, verse 1, in the second year of King Darius, in the 6th month, on the first day of the month, the word of the Lord came by Haggai the prophet, to Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, saying, this people says, this is what the people are saying, the time has not come, the time that the Lord's house should be built. The people didn't have a problem with God's will. They knew it was God's will for his temple to be rebuilt. What the people said was, it ain't time. It ain't time. That will mess you up. That is very dangerous. Because how many people know God wants you to do something? Your problem is you keep thinking that it's not time. These people knew God wanted the house rebuilt. Oh, it ain't time. It's not time. No, honey. This isn't your timing. This is his timing. It's not for you to decide when it is and when it is not time. It's for him to decide. The moment he begins speaking to his people, the moment that the Holy Spirit is moving on somebody, it's moving for two reasons. Because God's will and God's timing have lined up. And at that moment when God's people say, it ain't time, you're in danger. You are in danger because God is saying, if it wasn't time, I wouldn't even be speaking to you right now. If it wasn't time, you wouldn't be feeling what you're feeling right now. How many people have bucked against and rebelled against the Spirit of God thinking that it wasn't time? Go to the book of 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, the book of James. He puts so much emphasis on the fact that he said, look, when the Spirit is moving, it is time. In the Old Testament, he says, today is the day of salvation. Today, when it's time, it's time. Don't ever say it's not time, because God is moving when it is time, and he says, you're not promised another time. See, we want to get what they call in the courtroom a continuance. And when the judge is moving upon somebody that needs to happen, if they need more time, they make a motion to the judge and say, we would like a continuance. Can we push this back and move it on to another date? And it's up to the judge. And it's actually at the mercy of the judge if he decides, no, we're going to do it now, or yeah, you can have more time. But here's the deal. God is in heaven upon the throne. He is not only the judge, but he's the king, and he's the King of Kings. And he's saying, I'm doing this for you. It is time. I understand that maybe your time was a little bit off, but we need to stop giving a motion to the king and saying, can I have a continuance? That's not what he's saying. He says, look, I'm never even give you a promise that there's going to be another time. Today is the day of salvation. Today is the day that God is saying, we need to make this thing happen. That's why he needs runners. Because a runner is ready to go when it's time. You all know the story of the 5 foolish and the 5 wise virgins? They're actually not as different as you think. They were all virgins, therefore they had all kept their promise and their oath. They were all prepared to be the brides. They all slumbered and slept. All of them, not just 5. All of them did. They're not as far different as you think. The difference was there was 5 that kept themselves prepared and ready to move when the time came. And when the time came, they were ready to move. The 5 foolish, when the time came, said, can I have a continuance? And what happened? They got left behind. Why? Because it was an appointed time. And what's crazy to me is, and I know we don't do this anymore, but used to, you know, if you worked in an office or whatever, you had that big, you remember the big computer monitors that weighed like 400 pounds and they took up most of your desk and everything? We don't have that anymore. But people who had schedules and did stuff, what they do, they put sticky notes right on the side of their computer monitor and stuff like that, and you had that. And a lot of times it was appointments because you needed to remember. And there'd be a date and a time on a sticky note. Maybe you had to make a phone call. Maybe you had a place to be, but you put it there. And a long time ago, when I prayed for things and something God did that really helped me was he gave me this goofy vision. And what I saw was this computer monitor on God's desk. I know he doesn't have a computer. Maybe he does. I don't know. I'd like to know what brand he has. It's probably an Apple. But it's probably a really good one. But what I saw on God's desk in his computer was a sticky note with my name on it. And I know that on there, and maybe he does, maybe doesn't, I don't know, but there's a date and a time on that thing. The thing that I'm praying for, the things that I'm praying for, God already knows the outcome. And he already has a plan. And part of his plan is the time. But you can believe that when the time comes, he'll be there. Oh, he'll be there. He won't be early. He won't be late. He'll be there right on time, you know. The question is, are you going to be there? Are you willing to wait? Or by that time, are you already going to give up? Or did you come early? Or have you asked for a continuance and you're going to show up late? See, none of these things will work because God is going to be there at the appointed time. And so we have to serve him now and be ready, because I'm going to tell you something. God has no intentions of leaving anybody behind and leaving anybody in the dust, and they missed their chance. He has no intentions of that. See, here's the thing about the great God we serve. Sometimes you've missed your appointments in the past, and sometimes visions didn't come to fruition because you didn't have what it took to wait for the timing of the whole thing, right? It didn't happen because actually you gave up a little too early. But God he's such a great and mighty, merciful God. You missed your appointment. Can I tell you, let's go back to the doctor's office and we'll close. Can I tell you that I actually had an appointment with my doctor. This has been last winter or something. Had an appointment with my doctor, and I called, and this was 3 or 4 days earlier. I called, And you get those automated things. If you would like to hear your appointment, press 1. If you would like, and it came up, if you need to cancel your appointment, press 3 or whatever. I pressed it, put in my date of birth, got this verification, got this thing. Good, we're good to go. About 3 or 4 months later, I had to go back to the doctor, and I called him. And they said, well, Mr. Phillips, we can see that your last appointment, you didn't show up. I know. I pushed 3, you know. Of course I didn't show up. I had to cancel it. I don't cancel appointments and then show up. Of course I didn't show up. Well, it didn't register or whatever, some nonsense, whatever they come up with on the other end of the phone. They said, well, sir, we are not going to be making any more appointments with you because you didn't show up at the last one. Well, my wife called the doctor. The doctor knows her very well, knows the family. He's an awesome, awesome guy. And he said, we don't cancel appointments with him, with his family. Let's get him back on the books. So you just got to talk to the right people. Get him back on the books, and I got back in. Because God is not the kind of God who says, you missed your last appointment, so I'm done. No. God is the God who says, no, I have a covenant with them. They missed their last appointment, yeah. They missed their last 14 appointments, if we really want to count this. But I have a covenant with them. I'm never going to leave them. Never going to forsake them. They can miss 35 appointments in the past. But I have an appointment with them. I have a covenant with that home, that family. Maybe this whole thing got messed up. I don't know how it got messed up. Not because God did something wrong. How many people in this room know that sometimes things got messed up because you messed it up? But you serve a God in heaven saying, I have a covenant with them, and I made a promise. Rain or shine, good or bad, pretty or ugly, I made a promise. I will not leave you. I will not forsake you. And God said, I made that promise. I'm going to stick to it. So you might have missed your last appointment, but God's saying, I've got another one, and I'm going to stick to it because you serve a God of mercy. Can we all stand, come to the music? Everybody in here serves a God of grace and mercy, and his timing is perfect. It is, I don't know who you are, it is no coincidence, God's timing. Because see, sometimes God's timing can be so dead on, you think, man, I don't know how this works. It's a coincidence. It ain't a coincidence. God doesn't do that. His timing is just that perfect. Bow your heads with me for a moment. God, I'm praying right now your timing is perfect for each and every one of us. God, there are people here in this room. I'm believing. I know today that there are people in this room. They've heard your voice. They have felt something in their spirit. God, there's something you have spoken to them about. God, you are above all things. God, there's nothing that is beyond your ability, God. But God, I'm praying some people are here today. All of us are here today because your timing has lined up with your will. So God, let us act accordingly right now. The vision is plain. Let us run right now to your presence where, God, your perfect will is about to happen in your perfect timing. Don't let anybody in here believe that what the devil's trying to tell them, this is just a coincidence. This is not, no. God is right here today because it is your day. It is your appointment. And I'm praying right now, God is saying, just come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. In Jesus' precious name, hallelujah.